go. So we'll start with our Kahoot. So get out your devices, and it will be our 5 questions for Kahoot. The pin is 5198834. Two more people. 1, 2, there we go. So as I said last time, today and on the syllabus, we're talking about Disney movies, the corporate made movies. So here's what the quiz deals with that. So first question, what's Disney's first full-length animated feature? Cinderella, Pinocchio, Sleeping Beauty, or Snow White? Snow White. Snow White was seen as a massive gamble for the company. And many believe that the company should not be doing it because they were very successful with the shorts that they were producing. And it took many years, I believe 6 or 7 years, to create Snow White. And if it would not have been successful, many believe that it would have bankrupted the company because they went into debt or accrued debt several times to finance the movie. The success of the movie actually led on to the company being able to create future movies. And if you look at if you were to Google the headquarters of the Walt Disney Studios, those studios were actually built off of the money made from Snow White when that was released. So question 2. First Pixar full-length animated feature, was it Finding Nemo, Toy Story, A Bug's Life, or Monsters Incorporated? Toy Story. Bug's Life was the second one released. Toy Story was the first and it was also the first full-length CGI or this computer animated feature to be released. And before Toy Story was released, Pixar was a company born from kind of the computer engineering department, people who worked for the computer engineering department at the University of Utah. And they developed programs and they developed materials so that other television or other movie companies could use their work. So one of the earliest examples of this is in one of the Star Trek movies. There is a scene where they are looking at what would happen to a planet if some type of missile hit it or something, some type of this missile that they wanted to repopulate the planet. So they're looking at a little computer screen and it shows a planet kind of repopulating and then what happens with it. That was one of the first things that Pixar did as a company that was shown in movie theaters or featured in a feature-length film. And then from there, they started working on the different shorts. So if on Disney Plus, you can watch the animated shorts that Pixar has made, Luxo Jr., Red's Dream, and in many of the Pixar movies, those are kind of teased as well. And basically what they were doing is they were trying to show how computer animation could change the future of movies or could contribute to movies, and it really ended up changing the future of animated movies altogether. If you watch Beauty and the Beast, the scene where they sing the song Beauty and the Beast and they're dancing, that scene was computer generated. If you look at the backgrounds look much more vibrant than a lot of the other backgrounds in the movie. That was a computer generated background. I believe the first computer generated scene was in The Little Mermaid at the very end when Ariel and Eric are married and they're kind of riding off into the sunset or sailing off into the sunset. And you see the mermen and merwomen come up and there's a celebration. That background was computer generated. And then ultimately led up to trying to release a feature-length film, which Pixar needed the help of Disney to finance that and to release that. So Toy Story was originally, and along with Bug's Life, was originally released under the Walt Disney Pictures title. It was not Disney Pixar as we know it today. Does anybody know who the CEO of Pixar was?
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs from Apple. He financed Pixar out of his own personal finances for a very long time, and actually in 2006 when Pixar and Disney merged, or Disney bought Pixar, that's what officially made Steve Jobs a billionaire, and also made him the largest stakeholder of Disney share at that time until he passed away. Third question. First Pixar movie released under the Disney Pixar label in 2006. Cars, Monsters University, Toy Story 3, or The Good Dinosaur? Cars. Do I remember talking about that at one point? Okay. So Cars was supposed to be the last movie released under the Disney Pixar agreement, and then Steve Jobs had announced Pixar was, let's say, they were going to go free agent, let's call it that. And they were going to be open to signing with other television or other movie studios to release their titles. When Bob Iger stepped down, when he resigned, when Bob Iger took over, when Michael Eisner stepped down, Bob Iger almost immediately started a relationship with Steve Jobs. And does anybody remember, we talked about what was kind of the first step of that relationship with Steve Jobs? It had nothing to do with Pixar. Anybody remember that? In Bob Iger's book, he discusses talking with Steve Jobs and trying to develop this relationship. And the first thing they actually worked on together was Apple was releasing the, what was it called? What was the first iPod that you could watch TV on and video on? So they were releasing that, and Steve Jobs he asked Bob Iger, when we release this, could we show some of your content on there? So things like Desperate Housewives, I believe Grey's Anatomy, were available on this platform. And that really kind of opened the door to then further discussing the merging of the Disney Pixar label. And the reason it shows up Disney Pixar, and we talked about this with acquisitions, and it doesn't, like Lucasfilm doesn't say Disney Lucasfilm, Marvel doesn't say Disney Marvel, is because John Lasseter and Ed Catmull were, when Disney bought Pixar, those two were put in charge of Disney Animation as well. And so it was a branding move so that you would see Disney Pixar, because those two were now going to be working on animated movies for Disney as well. Question 4. First Walt Disney full-length feature to be filmed in Europe was Swiss Family Robinson, Treasure Island, Blackbeard's Ghost, or Pollyanna? Treasure Island. So when Treasure Island was released in the early 50s, late 40s, early 50s, Europe actually had a system where they would tax anything that was shown in Europe from other countries, because they were trying to let's just say because of the geopolitical ramifications at that time. So Walt Disney, seeing that the revenue from international releases would decrease, he knew he could not, or it was not feasible to create an animated feature in Europe, but it was feasible to create a live action feature in Europe. And so that's actually why Treasure Island was created in Europe, so that the company would not have to pay the taxes that were being levied by the government. And then question 5, if you had to pick one movie to watch 10 times in a row, which would it be out of these 4? Avengers Infinity War, Toy Story 3, The Little Mermaid, or The Lion King? Avengers Infinity War or The Lion King? All right. First of all, who said Toy Story 3? Why?
I don't know. I don't think I'd get bored of it.
That scene, the incinerator scene, touching. The scene where Bonnie, like they're given to Bonnie, and they drive off. Yeah, that'll make you cry every time, or at least me. And if you didn't notice, watch Toy Story and watch Toy Story 3. Toy Story and Toy Story 3 end with the same scenery. Toy Story, remember, opens with the blue wall, so the sky, and then the white clouds, the white puffy clouds. Toy Story 3, as they're driving away, it pans up and it ends looking at the blue sky with the white puffy clouds, which is kind of what led many people to think that was the last Toy Story movie to be made. And then, they brought out Toy Story 4 on everyone, and people weren't really sure if it needed to be made, but man, it's a really good story and people loved it. How many people have seen Toy Story 4? If you haven't seen Toy Story 4, it is very, very good. It's on Disney Plus now, that you could watch that. So who said The Lion King? Why The Lion King?
I said it because it's like a classic. It always brings back some nostalgia. And,
Okay.
I always have watched it.
All right. It was part of the Renaissance, right? There's a great documentary on Disney Plus called Waking Sleeping Beauty about kind of the Renaissance of Disney animation.
For me, it's just the only movie out of that list that I know I could watch and not get tired of. Plus,
Okay.
growing up, it was the only movie that my family wouldn't argue about.
Okay. You wouldn't argue. Everybody was okay watching the movie. What other movie would you say that's not on this list? Is there like a standout movie that your go-to every time?
Cars.
Cars?
Cars, yeah.
Yeah.
Really? How many people say Cars? This is great. That's one of my favorite franchises. Cars and Cars 3. Cars 3 is such a great movie to me because of the stories that tell. And also, my oldest son, that was one of the first movies he saw. We went to see Cars at actually the Pink Palace IMAX, and then Cars 3 was coming out. So we saw that, and then both boys now love Cars. We have like the Cars table that has radiator springs on it and a racing track around it and everything. And plus, when we talk about movies like Cars and Toy Story, when Toy Story was released, it wasn't until a few months before that Disney actually made the large investment to try and manufacture toys for the movie because they weren't sure if the movie was going to be a success. Naturally, a movie with the title like Toy Story is just a veritable goldmine for selling merchandise, right? Same thing with Cars. The little Matchbox size cars that they sell, or Hot Wheels size cars that they sell. It's great. I mean, Cars 3 came out in 2017. It's now 2020. You can go in Target, Walmart, toy stores. There's still a Cars section that they're still putting out. And I walk through pretty much on a regular basis, not just with my boys. So you can see they're always putting out more stuff too. I mean, those franchises were great for selling merchandise as well. Who said Infinity War? Why did you say that?
I just like it the best out of all the movies on the up there.
Okay.
Same reason.
Same. Okay.
Well, it's a good movie, but I feel like since it's 3 hours long, I don't have to sit there for 30 hours. I don't know if I'm good at that. I really like all like the superheroes in it and the storyline.
Might not be your most efficient use of time, right? But did anybody else in the back? Did you say Infinity War? Why?
Just liked it.
Because of the recency, the more action.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up watching Lion King, so I kind of got tired of it.
Okay. Anybody know what the classic story or play that Lion King is based on? Anybody? It's the story of Hamlet. Simba having to reconcile or deal with the death of his father, being murdered by his uncle, then going back and avenging his father's death. So in that case, I guess Simba was also an Avenger movie. So we will, as I said, we're talking about the corporate movies that Disney has made. I'll show you this list. This is the list from D23. D23 is the official Disney fan group. And if you're interested in joining D23, and you get newsletters and access to different things, there's a free membership that you can join it. You don't have to pay to join it. So, 1937, the first full-length feature released by the Walt Disney Company, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And then I want you to, as we scroll down, because we're going to start going pretty fast, I want you to pay attention to some of the dates. Okay, so 1937, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. As I said, it took about 6 or 7 years to create, and was seen as a massive risk for the company to do that. Then, as we move down, you see Pinocchio and Fantasia were both released in 1940, 3 years later. That's something I want you to pay attention to as we go further down this list, because you're going to start seeing more and more, some upwards of 20 movies released in a year by the company. So Fantasia is the only full-length feature, the first one of the only full-length features that has Mickey Mouse in it. Mickey Mouse has a scene where, he has the hat and he's trying to he can't control the power of Yinsid. And anybody know why the name Yinsid was used? Spell Yinsid.
Disney backwards.
It's Disney backwards. So that was a movie where it was known as the concert piece. And Walt Disney wanted theaters to be equipped with a special surround sound system to enjoy this movie. A lot of smaller theaters, especially in small town and rural America, could not afford the equipment, couldn't afford the cost of having that kind of extended or advanced sound system to show this movie. So it really was not very profitable in its time for that reason, because the overhead was so expensive, and then not a lot of people could show it the way that it needed to be shown. While Fantasia was being developed, Pinocchio was also developed, because and they released in the same year because Fantasia was taking a lot longer than they anticipated, based mainly on the sound and getting the sound together. 1941 was The Reluctant Dragon. That's really the first animated / live action feature. And basically, The Reluctant Dragon, the company used that to advertise their studio, their new studio at the time. Because remember, they built their studio based off the money they made from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So they wanted to show off the studio, and they wanted to kind of create a promotional video for them, if you will. So The Reluctant Dragon is actually about a human, a live action human, who has an idea to tell a story about the reluctant dragon. And he goes and he wants to pitch the idea to Disney. He goes to the Walt Disney Studios and ends up going on a tour of the studio, seeing people doing different animations, different places, and throughout the movie he learns that they've actually already developed the animated feature. So this movie was the first live action combination with animated film, but it was also a major promotional or advertisement for the Walt Disney Company. And that's also on Disney Plus if you would like to watch it. So we'll go down the list. You see 41 was also Dumbo, Bambi in 42. Saludos Amigos in 1943 was actually a product of an effort by the U.S. government to contract with Walt Disney to go and help relations in South America. So citizens in South America did not drive toward more communist thinking because of the geopolitical happenings at that time. So Saludos Amigos in 43, Victory Through Air Power. For a while, the U.S. government continued their contract with Walt Disney, so there were a lot of different instructional videos that Disney created at cost. So they did not make money. They lost a lot of money on these features and animated shorts. All in an attempt to help the United States government during their wartime effort. The Three Caballeros came from Saludos Amigos. And then you see 46, there were two movies, Song of the South, Make Mine Music. We talked about Song of the South being one of the more controversial movies of Walt Disney, from the company. 47, Fun and Fancy Free. And you see, we get to the 50s, down to Peter Pan, Sword in the Rose, The Living Desert. 1953 is the first time that more than two movies, theatrical releases, occurred in a year, right? So, and The Living Desert was it was a documentary. Walt Disney started having people travel around the world and creating these documentaries, which now ultimately led to what we have as Disney Nature now. But it also, if you've ever been to the parks, how many people have been to a park and ridden the Jungle Cruise? The boat ride in Adventureland that takes you around. You see audio animatronic lions and snakes, and those were based off of his nature documentaries, that ride. And his original intent was he wanted to have live animals on that ride. When he was told that live animals wouldn't cooperate, they went with audio animatronic. And now if you go to the Animal Kingdom in Orlando, you can go on a safari trek where you see a lot of live animals that in their a created habitat, we'll say. So you notice 55, 4 movies released. That's also the time when Disneyland in Anaheim opened. So I just want you to pay attention to the number of movies released in the year and how they grow. We're at about 3 or 4 a year. 1960, there's 5, 6, 7 released. So you can see the company has grown, and they're starting to increase the number of releases in a year. And these include animated and live action. So live action takes less time to create. It's also less expensive to create or produce than an animated feature. So we'll go down, and these up to this point are still all made by the Walt Disney Corporation. In the early 80s is when Disney created Touchstone Pictures. Touchstone Pictures was a way to, you can see right here, it'll say Touchstone behind it. It's a way to create content that was less focused on children, more focused on adults, but it was still for an older audience, but it was still, kind of the quality family style entertainment. So Splash was the first movie released under the Touchstone label. And it's a story with Tom Hanks and falling in love with a mermaid, and the mermaid, how that relationship works out. Kind of a preamble to what we had with what animated feature? Man falls in love with the mermaid. The Little Mermaid, right? Return to Oz. One of the, and this is on Disney Plus, in my opinion, one of the, that movie stuck with me for many reasons. If you ever have a chance to watch it, it's very interesting. So you see with now the Touchstone label, the number of movies that are being created. Let's look at 1987, for instance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 movies in 1987. So and most of these are Touchstone. You'll see most being live action because, again, it takes less time. It's less expensive to produce the live action than the animated shorts. During this time, the late 70s and early 80s, Disney Animation was also going through kind of what their down period, okay? It was taking a long time to produce The Black Cauldron, over many, many years. And when it was released, it was did not make the money that the company wanted. So they were finding themselves in a situation where they really needed a resurgence of their animated department. We come to 1989 and The Little Mermaid. That was the first film of the animated renaissance for the Walt Disney Company. And a lot of these movies now are on Disney Plus that you could watch. So 90 through 94 is when Little Mermaid, Aladdin, or Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King are produced. And it's just amazing box office numbers. 1992, The Mighty Ducks. And if you've heard, there's a reboot of this that they're rebooting to be as a series on Disney Plus. How many people have seen The Mighty Ducks? The Mighty Ducks about a ragtag group of kid ice hockey players in the state of Minnesota. For the company, it's also important to note, Mighty Ducks was produced because Michael Eisner, the CEO of the company at that time, his sons were very interested in the sport of hockey. So he wanted to produce a hockey movie. Based off of the success of this movie, then not based entirely, but the name and the logo is, based off the success of this movie, the company actually, when Anaheim, the city of Anaheim was awarded an NHL team, the NHL team was called the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. And the logo looked the same as the Ducks on the front of their jerseys for a season or so. And then now they eventually dropped the Mighty in the Ducks title. So now it's the Anaheim Ducks that's still playing in the city of Anaheim.
They changed the name because of Disney?
No, Anaheim did not have an NHL team before this movie.
Also made the whole team.
So I don't want to overstate things and say that's the reason Anaheim got a team. That's the reason the NHL franchise at Anaheim was named the Mighty Ducks. And that's the reason they had the logo they had. And the company owned a portion of the Mighty Ducks at one point, of the Anaheim franchise. Another on here that has anybody seen Angels in the Outfield? What's Angels in the Outfield about? The Anaheim Angels were they were in the doldrums of baseball, and then they're visited by Christopher Lloyd, an angel who helps them perform. And so you probably know the scene where one of the outfielders gets picked up by angels, carried over to the fence, he catches the ball to rob someone of a home run. Does anybody know who that actor was? That was Matthew McConaughey in one of his first big roles. After Dazed and Confused, but in one of his kind of headline roles at that time. And also, that movie was produced because, if you can guess it, the company owns stock in, or a share of, the Anaheim Angels. So here's The Lion King in 1994. We also introduced Hollywood pictures. So at this point, let's look at 1994, and let's count this. Starting with Cabin Boy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, keep going. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29 movies released in 1994 under Disney and their affiliated studio titles. In 1995, the first, as we talked about, the first computer-generated animated full-length feature of Toy Story. And a lot of these, has anybody ever seen Mr. Holland's Opus? May not realize that was actually, because it was Hollywood Pictures, it was released under Disney, and things like Father of the Bride and Father of the Bride 2. Movies like The Hunchback of Notre Dame in '96, and Mulan, and some of the other movies, Hercules, received good box office numbers, but they didn't rise to the level of the four previously mentioned that kind of founded the golden age, founded the renaissance of Walt Disney animation. And so, in this area, is also coinciding with what was going on at the corporate level with the CEO and Michael Eisner. Michael Eisner takes over in '84, and him and his second-hand man, right-hand man, go to work, and they greatly increase park offerings, hotel offerings at the parks. They increase attendance at the parks. They also increase ticket prices at the parks. They kind of oversaw the renaissance of animated feature films. And then in the early 90s is when his right-hand man passed away tragically in a plane accident. From then on, you kind of start to see within the company, there were some rumblings and there were some people, or things weren't going as well as the company would like them. They were involved in a number of negotiations and personnel issues that were unfortunate and cost the company a lot of money. Remember the Titans, Pearl Harbor, the Royal Tenenbaums? Anyone has ever seen that movie? Look, even ESPN's Ultimate X, released under Touchstone. So we're getting into 2004. 2004, at this point, there were not a lot of animated features being released. This was also the time when Roy E. Disney was working with others to put together a stakeholder coup, if you will, and to push Michael Eisner out of the company. 2004 is when it was officially agreed upon that he would not work past his extended contract, or they would not extend his contract, and that was up in 2006. But once they went through the long and arduous process of selecting Bob Iger as CEO, they sped up the process. So in October 2005, Michael Eisner stepped down and Bob Iger took over. So you see Cars right here, the first Disney Pixar release under that label. And then 2008, and we're getting down to the 2010. So just let's do our counting. 2010, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 in 2010. We are starting to increase on an annual basis. You'll start to see movies like Marvel's The Avengers show up in these lists after the purchase of Marvel Studios in 2008. Here's Iron Man 3. Frozen, possibly one of the most successful Disney animated movies to be released. And here's this Disney Nature, just to point this out. Bears is Disney Nature. Those were what now we have as the documentaries from the company that started with those documentaries a long, long time ago. And the original ride, or Jungle Book, the ride, was originally based on. 2015, Star Wars: The Force Awakens. This is the first Lucasfilm movie released under the Disney label. So let's real quick. You start to see multiple movies from the companies or from the titles, the studios being released in the same year. And let's stop at 2018 and do our count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you see it it's kind of going back, dropping off a little bit, right? Now with the purchase of Fox and all of the Fox titles that come with that studio, that number is jumping up very, very high at this point. Also in 2018 is when it was first announced. 2019, what else has happened within the company? And it ends with the Rise of Skywalker. But what happened November 12th, 2019? I'll give you a hint. You all have requirements based on this to watch different things on it. Disney Plus was launched November 12th, 2019. There are a lot of properties that possibly would be released in theaters that now are slated to be released straight to Disney Plus. When Disney Plus launched, there was obviously, if you're a Star Wars fan, The Mandalorian, right? The series. But there was Noelle, a feature-length film that was released on launch day. There was Lady and the Tramp, a live-action remake or CGI remake of the animated film that was released the 12th. Now we have movies like Timmy Failure, Mistakes We're Making, that was released, I think 3 weeks ago. So you have a lot of movies that, rather than going to theaters, are going directly to the consumer. And if you're interested in knowing more about this, I urge you to read or listen to Bob Iger's book, because he spends a chapter or more talking about the need to, rather than wait to be disrupted by some other platform who's doing this, they needed to disrupt their model. So right now, the company is making a significant change to how they offer and produce their content. The same quality is going into that content in many cases, but it's going straight to this service that currently costs $6.99 a month, right? Now, when prices rise, but the kind of their measurement for success had to change along with that. So, all in all, what's the final number that we have down here besides Star Wars: Rise of the Skywalker? 748. Almost 750 movies have been released by the Walt Disney Company since 1943, when Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was released. A lot of work between that time and now, right? And a lot of it spurred on by things like acquisitions of Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, now Fox. In the theaters now is The Call of the Wild. That was produced under Fox. That's now qualifies as a Disney release. So a lot of those, or many movies from acquired studios, also kind of going and starting different labels so you could have that separation of the animated classics and the family classics to some of these other titles that have been released under things like Touchstone and Hollywood Pictures. And then we talked about in the acquisitions, now when a movie's released, and it used to be released under 20th Century Fox, what's it released under now? It's called 20th Century Studios. Instead of Fox Searchlight Pictures, it's now Fox or Searchlight Studios Pictures, to try and get away from the Fox title and everything that comes, the positive and negative that comes with people's perceptions of the Fox title. So now the rest of the class, what I want to hear from you is, what are your favorite movies? Like, let's say you had to pick 3 movies that are your top movies. Animated, live action, the recent acquired studios. What would you say some of those are, and why? Cocktail. Touchstone.
Avatar.
Okay.
And
The first Avengers in 2012. So when Avatar was released, so the only Avatar movie that's been made right now was actually not a Disney release, it was a Fox release. Now, since they purchased Fox, now it's into the fold with everything else as well. Others?
Cool Runnings, Peach Dragon, and the Aristocats.
Which Peach Dragon?
They were,
The original one? Okay. I haven't seen the remake of Peach Dragon, but I do love the original one. Others?
Hercules. I just saw on there, it said Good Morning Vietnam was one of theirs. That's like one of my favorite movies. And then Holes, I watched that.
Holes? Okay.
Beauty and the Beast, grew up watching it. Then probably Thor Ragnarok, can
Okay.
watch it any day. And then probably Nemo, it's a movie all my family can agree on, so.
Okay. Finding Nemo was the first movie my oldest son saw in a movie theater. We saw, or no. It was Finding Dory that we saw. We had watched Finding Nemo, I think, at home before.
Is Indiana Jones Disney?
So it's not, but Indiana Jones is, and well, it's sticky now because their relationship with Lucasfilm and owning Lucasfilm. I'm not quite sure, like if the newest one that's released, if it's going to be released under Disney, or if the Crystal Skull or the Crystal Skull was. But where that comes from is in the late '80s or mid '80s. Michael Eisner was making deals with Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, to put their properties and their intellectual property in the Disney parks. So you had things like Star Wars, Star Tours open at Disneyland and Hollywood Studios and Walt Disney World. And you had Indiana Jones. There's an Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland. If you've ever been to Hollywood Studios in Orlando, you can watch the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular show, which is amazing. It goes through the first movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, which when released did not have a subtitle. It was just Indiana Jones. But it goes through 3 of the scenes of that and shows how they carried out the stunts while filming the movie. So let's see, a cartoon that is an animated feature that is, let's say, most meaningful to you. And tell me why it's meaningful. What does it mean to you? Because this is getting at what we're going to wrap up class today with, and how we're going to start class next week.
I guess for me, Sword and Stone.
Sword in the Stone? Why?
It always brings back memories of like music and just like band stuff. And I always pretend to be like the guy that pulled the Sword in the Stone.
Okay.
Just like childhood memories.
Okay. And you know, there's a Sword in the Stone at the Disney parks. You walk into Fantasyland, there's a sword in the stone. Obviously, the thing is, no one can pull the sword from the stone. Actually, about a month ago, someone at Disneyland broke the prop and pulled the sword away from the stone. So, I don't know, maybe we have a new King Arthur based on that.
I'd have to say Monsters Inc.
Why so?
One, it's funny, and yeah, a bunch of the movies are funny, but I think that one sticks out, like the humor, and then also like just doing the right thing. Like Sully went out of his way,
All right.
and out of everybody's way to do.
We've been watching Monsters Inc. a lot lately. The boys stumbled across that one, and we've been watching that a lot lately.
Like there's so much subliminal humor that you don't even notice until you're like an adult and you actually just go like.
And the story behind Mike Wazowski, and who's the voice of Mike Wazowski? Billy Crystal. So the story goes that Billy Crystal was in the running to be Woody in Toy Story, and the schedule wasn't going to work out. So it wasn't necessarily that he turned it down and Tom Hanks got it, but he was in the running for it, and he did kind of have to pull himself out of the contention. And after seeing Toy Story and then seeing the success of Toy Story, Billy Crystal always joked that, that's how bad was I to pull myself out of contention for that. So I definitely want to be in a Pixar movie, so that then he's in with Monsters Inc., Monsters University, the shorts. There's about to be something on Disney Plus called Monsters at Work, a series of short episodes. Someone else?
Little Mermaid.
The Little Mermaid, all right. Part of the Renaissance. Why?
Well, I mean, for me growing up, there wasn't like a whole bunch of, I have naturally really red hair, and so she was the only one that kind of looked like me.
Okay. So that idea of representation, she looks like me, very powerful to a lot of people. Others want to share?
I really like The Princess and the Frog.
Okay.
I like ambition. Having ambition and determination is a really big thing to me. I feel like that's something that everybody should have, and she shows that very evidently in the movies.
Okay. So where we're going to end today, and where we're going to pick up next time, is you see, I asked what is a meaningful or most meaningful animated feature to you and why. And a lot of people talked about what it means to them. Now, these are animated features, right? They're movies you go see in a theater. The live action are the same, the Marvel movies, the Star Wars movies, whatever. But to fans, they mean something, right? And to individual fans, they mean something different. What Cars means to me doesn't mean to a lot of other people. You read a list of greatest Pixar movies, and Cars 2 and Cars 3 are always toward the bottom. But to me, it's potentially my fake Cars and Cars 3 are at least in my top 4 favorite Pixar titles. And so fans develop this identification and attachment points with different properties. Next class, we're going to talk about when fans take that identification and what they do with it. So there are a few videos that, like this week, your assignment was to watch a movie of your choice on Disney Plus. Next week is another movie of your choice on Disney Plus. But there's also a few fan-made movies that we're going to talk about next week that's on the syllabus, and hyperlinks provided. A few Star Wars fan films, a few Marvel fan films, and then one called The Further Adventures of Walt's Frozen Head, which Ben Lancaster, the director and producer of that, Skyped in with our class last year, so I would urge you to watch his Skype interview to prepare for class. So next week we're going to talk about what do fans do with their identification, and what do we do as fans when we want the stories to continue that the corporation starts out telling. Any questions? Have a good rest of the week. See everybody Monday. Thank you.